The art, but I guess one of the biggest things is by researching and reading and looking, one of the biggest things that separates our art, and this is going back in time, is that most nations in BC had the black and the red, but we also had a blue here. But we're not quite sure yet of how far that went back. If it went back beyond the 1700s when the first white person came here, when they started doing their trading, if we had the blue here, and that's the big search right now, is finding exactly what that blue paint was. But if you go into any museum or any place and you see the blue paint, it would probably say this is Nuxalk. But there are styles that are similar, I mean not similar, but different from all other nations. And one of the big things, if you look at this design here, the raven, we have the eyeball here, and we almost call it like an alder leaf. If you see the tip of the leaf, the stem goes down in here. We always had this on the back of the eye. And that's one of the most distinctive things that you could say it was Nuxalk. The other thing that was quite different is we carved quite deeply. I'm saying that in our masks, and some of our poles were similar to the Haida, two-dimensional, but some of our poles were carved very deep. And when I'm carving now, if you look at the feathers here, everybody, wow, that is so cool. You've taken the depth or the deepness of your carving, you know, way beyond other people. But I say, no, it's basically Nuxalk. And with my two sons, and we were, you know, talking about how the depth was with our masks, because most of them also went up to Frida Diesing, and up there everything's flat basically, but ours are like, you know, the depth of our masks are like this here, compare theirs to there. So it just shows the depth that we did carve, and showing photographs and stuff, you'll see it a little bit more. But I think what really holds us is our stories, our Smayustas. And so what we believed in was we lived in the upper world. Well, we didn't live there, but our creator lived there, Akhuntam. And he had a big house there called House of Nusmada. And Nusmada means where our stories come from, where we were created. And then the first people were put down in all these mountains then, and we called those first people, the first man that came down then got the title of the hereditary chief. I don't like using the name chief because that comes from a foreign land. So we called our chiefs now, we call them Stultum. And Stultum also means that I'm a servant of the people. I'm not the big chief to boss everybody around. And that's, I think, a big difference there if people realize that. But what I'm saying is that first story from the first people from coming from House of Nusmada was, now we call that story from when he came down. Some came down on poles, some floated down, some came down in the eyelashes of the sun, which is when you're out in the inlet or someplace and you see the sun peeking through the clouds and you see the rays coming down. That's what we call the eyelashes of the sun. So some of our chiefs, our first people, came down. But the most important thing that has held our art and our culture together is that first story, which is called the Smayusta. Now people say, oh no, we didn't have books back in the day. Well, this was our book here. And that was telling the people of the first story that came down. And now we take that story, we make a dance out of it, we make masks out of it, we hold it as our crest. So that was held on from day one to today. And that's why I say our culture is so powerful that we still hang on to those stories. And that first story now, if you look at it, it's the Stultum, which is the Nuxalk Society. And that's all of the hereditary chiefs that were put down in every village right through the Nuxalk Territory. So now with that story, if you look at it now, back in our day, we didn't look at material things. We didn't look at tools. We didn't look at big houses, big trucks or anything. Our most important thing was that story, to own that story, to actually be able to tell that story. And so now that story goes into our treasure boxes. Now the masks, the songs, the dances that were created out of that one story is told for over 15,000 years now. And I think that's why our culture is so soulful or, powerful. And that's one thing that we've hung on to for thousands and thousands of years. But now you think of today, how we see things, and again we're relearning everything over again. And I used to believe that we lost so much here through smallpox, but the way our elders have told us now today is that, hey, it's still there, but it's us that has let it go. So I think the direction now that we're taking now is we're going to go back to the land. We'll never go back to the way it was. But what I'm saying is we have to start looking after our land again to keep that power within us from the land. And if we lose the land, we're going to basically lose everything, because that's basically what we did here, was just take care of the land so well that we can survive. And again, we've done that. We've had that taken away. Now we're starting to redo that again. So I think that's what makes us so powerful, that we're still able to see those things. And again, the Stultum today, they're all new. We push them now. You got to learn your Smayusta. There was a fella here yesterday. He's going to hold the potlats in a couple of months. And I grew up with him, and I worked with him for many years. He didn't even know his own Smayusta. So now I'm telling him, you got to learn everything you can about the history of the chief that has given you this responsibility now. And remember, it's not for you. It's for the people. And I think when we start changing the way we think, because the way we were colonized, we're all individualized, each different home. So there's going to be different opinions because of the way we were growing up. But so what I'm saying now, if we can learn all our stories, we learn all what went on back in the day, we start changing the way we think, that's going to pull us together again. And now that's one of the biggest things that I feel about our art, is that when I came back home in 1984, when I graduated from Kazan, because nobody could teach me the carving here, I went up there. I wanted to learn to do masts, totem poles, paddles, everything, bent boxes, and I had to go leave my community because nobody knew how to do it here. So I came back, and right away they hired me in the school. I taught 21 years in the school. Now we got over 30 carvers in our community. There was just 2 of us carving when I came home. So now that we had to research into the art, and but I already knew at that time that our art was different from all other places, but I didn't understand why. So now I got a more understanding of our art. And I think the most important thing now is we're learning to look at it more closely. Like before, we would just see the mask and the photograph and, oh, that's Nuxalk. But now we want to deep deep digger into what the meaning of that mask was, how it was carved. So there's things in our masks that were also different from everybody on the coast. And one of the big things was the back of every Nuxalk masks. They were chopped out with a elbow adze, tachta we call it. And if you turn every mask together, you could see the chips taken out. It wasn't used by gouges. It wasn't used by every mask was also, you know, chipped out with an elbow adze or a D adze. We're not quite positive, but that's another way we know it's real Nuxalk if you switch it around. And the blue paint. So those are the two biggest differences, I think. I think the biggest one would be the blue paint, and where we got it, how we got it, we're not positive, but we know where we got the red rocks and the black rock to be able to put the paint on the different masks.